Hey everybody, BTO Pro here, and today we're going to look at very teeny tiny logo on a website and how even reuse at that level can save a ton of time and free people up to work on more advanced things. So, what am I talking about? I'm talking about this mark, the branding, the logo, whatever you want to call it. Every web property is going to have one at some level if we have enough properties. So whether that's a video game company, Google, Microsoft, right? There's a logo, the branding, the mark in some shape. What happens when we change the brand? Or if we have design standards around that? So if I right click, inspect, we pull this up, right? We have a link that's wrapping, in this case, appears to be just an image. It's SVG via URL. So there's an SVG there, so it's scales. It's 9.5K. Not huge. All right. So I could just put that on a website. However, we have certain stylistic branding guides we're trying to match here, right? So here we see it's the same type of a mark. However, this one, because it's on a white background here and maybe the contrast won't work as well, we have this variant of it. And this now points to College of Arts and Architecture here in this case. So we have another SVG generated. In this case, it says psu-mark. However, psu-mark here is not the same as the other one, right? And it's got the subtext to it, in this case, College of Arts and Architecture. Okay, still not seeing a problem. All right, now I'm on another web property that has to implement it the exact same way. And there's an interesting little wrinkle to this one. This one has SVG, it's got a link in it that goes somewhere, but it's company mark. And by wrapping this in a web component, we can stick more closely to the design standards put in place of our brand in this case, but also roll that out in such a way that other people can just leverage. In this case, it says company mark. So let's refactor this a bit from here. So I've been working on this. We're back to this Polaris. If you Polaris design, just code name for it. If you recall, I did a video not long ago on Polaris story card and how we pulled this out. Some of my students in class are going to be doing this for other tags. I'm trying to provide a lot of examples. So I've got Penn State here. Okay. And for starters, we're going to name this Polaris mark in this case. And you can see I have Polaris mark there. So if I want more than one, nothing ridiculous there. Let's look at what makes up Polaris mark. So we've got type, name, and URL. URL, let's apply default. All right, that should probably point to psu.edu. Okay, so if nothing is supplied there, I click and we go to the Penn State website. All right, which is part of what our consistency is. There's supposed to be this thing that backlinks to the top level. All right, so that's taken into account. Then we've got name and type. Let's see what we got here for name. All right, so we have college name. Okay, and we have name, Penn State logo, black. I don't know that actually would do anything. We need name used in that way. College name. We see this dot name. All right, so we have render dark and we have render default. So let's see what the difference is. Oh, I see why they have that name on there. Okay, and this was originally made by Eberly College of Science. There we go. So while this only has two, now as I'm reading through, we can see we've got a render method. The render method has a logo wrap. The logo wrap has this ahref URL, target blank. Let's put a little security parameter on there, which is rel equals, I believe it's no opener. No follow will allow. I'm not positive with it, but we can kind of codify security in this way. They'd click and it would open up in a new window because probably someone isn't clicking this expecting to just jump there directly and leave whatever context they're in. But we could parameterize that if we want to. Then, and this is a little different from some past video work I've shown, we have render source. Render source takes in type. So an interesting aspect to this is whenever type changes, let's get rid of our CSS. Whenever type changes, because we have type string defined in our properties, when type changes, this is going to rerun. But it's going to rerun as a parameter passed into render source. So imagine we have type here, and this is saying case dark or default. Now, let's make type default, shall we? If I could spell default, there we go, default. And then name, I'm not going to put anything there right now. It should be nothing. So the default case, in this case, right, we switch dark, it's going to be render dark. Otherwise, it's going to be render default. So as long as these methods here return HTML as far as the lit preprocessor for it, it would be the equivalent of writing the HTML thing in here. And the HTML function that's exported from lit allows us to nest that call within itself to render portions of a template. It's a pretty cool capability. So the default case is going to go down here. It's going to render this CSS to go with the scoping of this SVG, and it's going to pass in name right there. Now, we could make this even more stateful. It most likely would be stateful anyway, but let's just see what happens. So if we set name, we should see some change. So I'm going to save, and then we're going to right click. I'm going to go in and we're going to say psu-mark name equals. Cool, right? So this would be college architecture. And then if we said max width of this is 200 pixels, right? We have different ways that we could help constrain this design. And this is, again, just kind of something thrown together for demonstrative purposes at the moment, right? There are some additional constraints that would potentially have to be placed there, right? There's College of Arts, in this case it goes, and architecture. So we would want to, work with the actual brand, but it should be able to get that Eberly College of Science. So let's see, just by taking this, whoops, I don't want to go to that. All right, inspect. Let's move this over. I should be able to do psu-mark type equals dark. And then from there, I should be able to say name equals Eberly College of Science, who is the group that originally made this. So let's see. And there we go. So this is one way, and it appears that it might need to modify the font or something to get it to actually match. But this is one small way that we can encapsulate and parameterize some CSS and HTML, and in this case, an SVG, in order to transform the work performed. There's no more generation of SVGs by itself. There's no more using Photoshop to align this perfectly, export the SVG. There is also the potential of having that mark on every website. And so if shipped via a content delivery network, you are not downloading that additional 9K or whatever it is, which doesn't sound like much. I don't disagree. But for the branding consistency potential, for the lack of work that needs to be done to do that same thing, and as an added benefit, not sending that data over the wire for every property we go to, those are nice gains that even in the widows, if that's, 20, 30 minutes of time, I don't actually know how long that would take the average developer, but even if it's, let's say it's 30 minutes, that's 30 minutes not spent on that scales out over every property. You never have to focus on that again. And we can then change it and update it with consistency of the overarching brand if needed, as opposed to deviation when we do modify at times. This logo has changed in the, 20 years I've been here. But small example of another way web components can free people up to work on other things more rapidly. When we're not focused on the logos and the buttons and the icons, we can focus on the higher order concerns. So enjoy component land.